Before we dive in, a quick note. This content is for educational purposes and is not affiliated with, sponsored by, or endorsed by the CFA Institute. The number one reason candidates fail asset allocations isn't the math, it's forecasting bias. So if you can't spot the psychological traps in a vignette, your perfect formulas won't save you. Today, we are mastering the challenges in identifying biases to ensure you don't fall for the same tricks that wreck professional portfolios. Imagine you're getting back into the dating scene. You go on one single date with a person who loves skydiving and eats nothing but raw kale. Suddenly, you tell all your friends, whoa, everyone in the city is a health nut, adrenaline junkie. You just committed a massive forecasting error. You took a tiny, extreme sample and project it onto the whole populations. In the CFA world, we do this with fat tails and short time horizons all the time. If we base your client's entire retirement on the crazy market of 2020, you're basically saying the whole world lives on raw kale because of one weird Tuesday. We are here to make sure your capital market expectations, your forecasts for how assets will perform are grounded in reality, not just your most recent memories. Let's start with the major misconceptions. The data frequency dilemma. More data is always better. Many analysts think that using high-frequency data, which is just a fancy way of saying data collected very often, like daily or weekly, makes forecasts more precise. But here's the catch. Why high-frequency data makes your variance and correlations more precise? It does absolutely nothing for the precision of your sample means. The sample mean is just the average return over a period. To get a better average, you don't need more frequent data. You need longer history. Think of it like checking your weight. Stepping on the scale every 10 minutes, which is high frequency, will show you exactly how you weight. Your weight fluctuates, variance, but it won't give you a better idea of your true average weight for the year than the weighting yourself once a week over 12 months. Let's talk about the GERD's volatility and asynchrony. When we look at many different assets at once, we need a lot of observations. If the number of observations is smaller than the number of assets, your mark breaks. You get spurious zero volatilities. Spurious just means fake or false. Essentially, your model will hallucinate that some portfolios have zero risks just because the math ran out of data point. Then there's the asynchronicity problem. Asynchronicity is when data points for different variables don't actually happen at the same time, even if they are labeled the same way. Imagine trying to correlate the temperatures in New York and Tokyo using daily data. When it's noon in New York, it's 2 a.m. the next day in Tokyo. The data is out of sync. This asynchronicity distorts your correlations and creates lead-lag relationships that aren't actually real. If you want to avoid this, use low-frequency data like monthly or quarterly reports, where those few hours of time zone difference don't matter as much. Now, let's talk about the Peso problem. This is a classic level 3 concept. The Peso problem occurs when historical returns look amazing because a rare catastrophic event didn't happen during your sample period, even though the possibility of that event was affecting prices the whole time. Think of it like a guy who makes $100 every day by juggling chainsaws. For 300 days, he has a mean return of $100 and zero volatility. He looks like a genius, but on day 301, he loses an arm. That's sad. If you only look at the same 300 days, your exposed after the fact data could vastly underestimate the ex ante, before the fact risk. The curriculum points to the Argentine peso. It was pegged 1-to-1 with the dollar for years. Then it devalued massively in 2002. If you only study the stable years, your forecast for the future would be dangerously wrong because you ignore the hidden risks of devaluations. Quick GPS checks. We've covered why more data isn't always better for means, how time zones can mess up your correlations, and why quiet history can hide massive chainsaw juggling risks. Now, let's look at the biases that we bring to the tables as analysts. First is data mining and time period bias. Analysts love to find patterns, but if you look at a data set long enough, you will find a pattern, even if it's just a coincidence. This is called data mining bias. The rule here is no story, no future. If you find a correlation between the S&P 500 and the number of kittens born in Ohio, but you can't provide an economic rationale for why they are linked, it's probably a fake relationship. To beat this, always test your theory out of the sample, meaning testing it on data you didn't use to find the pattern in the first place. So take a look at new data with the pattern you think exists and see if there's truly a relationship and if we can have a rationale for that. Then we have time period bias. This is when your results only work because of your specific start or end date. For example, small cap stocks of smaller companies look like they outperform large stocks from 1926 to 1974. But if you just move the start date to, let's say, 1932, the outperformance jumps from 0.43% to 3.49%. If your discovery depends on the exact day you started counting, it's not a discovery. It's a coincidence, unfortunately. What about conditioning information, the business cycle secret? This is where many candidates lose points in the essay section. You must account for conditioning information. This means recognizing that an asset risks its beta and its return change depending on whether the economy is in an expansion or a recession. Let's look at the math logic. If you just take the average beta, the average risk, and the average market return and multiply them together, you are making a mistake. Why? Because in a recession, beta usually goes up. Things gets riskier, why market returns go down. If you ignore these conditions, your unconditional forecast will be wrong. You have to calculate the return for the expansion state, calculate the return for the recession state, and then take the weighted average of those two results. What about the psychological gauntlet? Let's hunt for the level 3 secret in the behavioral section. The curriculum lists several biases you must be able to identify by name. The first one is called anchoring bias. You are stuck on the first number you heard. If a stock was $100 and it drops to $50, you'll anchor it on the $100 and think it's a bargain, even if the company is going bankrupt. The next one is status quo bias. You are lazy. You want to keep the forecast the same as last year to avoid the pain of being wrong about a new change or having to justify your reason. The next one is confirmation bias. Your only way is to read the news that says you're right. We ignore the black clouds and only look at the one sunny data point. What about prudence bias? You mute your forecast. You're afraid that if you predict a 20% drop and you are wrong, you will get fired. So you just predict a safe 2% drop instead. Availability bias is when you overreact to things that are easy to remember, like a recent market crash or a news headline you saw this morning. Justify your bias identifications. On the exam, if they ask you to identify and justify a bias, don't just give the definition. We will do some practice later, but for now, if you see a manager who had a bad experience in the 90s and is now refusing to buy tech stocks today, you must say the manager is exhibiting availability bias because her past vivid memory of the tech bubble is disproportionately influencing her current forecast. If a manager finds a reason to be bullish only after deciding that she wants to buy, that is confirmation bias. You need to point out that she is searching for evidence to support a favored view. You are doing the work that separates the charter holders from the candidates. If you want more of these deep dive audio sessions to turn your commute into a study hall, subscribe to Study Buddy. We take these Dan concepts and turn them into the stories that help you remember the logic when the exam clock is ticking. Let's wrap up with model uncertainty. This is the inception of forecasting. It's wonder if your entire way of thinking is wrong. Number one is parameters uncertainty. Your formula is right, but your inputs, like the average return you plug in, are slightly off. Number two, input uncertainty. You are using a proxy, like using the S&P 500 to represent the whole world market, and that proxy is imperfect. Lastly, number three, model uncertainty. This is the big one. Your whole model is flawed, like the 2008 financial crisis, where everyone modeled that housing price would never drop nationwide at the same time. They were wrong and the model collapsed. Let's take a look into our mathematical checks. If your standard deviation goes up, your risk goes up because standard deviation stands for risk. If your correlation with the global market is low, your diversification benefits goes up. But if your asynchronicity is high, your measure's correlation is probably fake. You now have a mental map of the challenges in forecasting. You know that more data isn't a magic wand, and hidden risks like the Peso Problem are everywhere, and that your own brain is often your biggest enemy. Excellent job so far. Until next time, bye for now.